So you want to travel, but you think it's very expensive. I'm here to tell you that it doesn't have to be. All over social media, you'll see people living in luxurious hotels, resorts, luxury Airbnbs. They chose that, they had the money for that, and that's how they're traveling. You don't have to travel that way. You can travel on a budget, and you can travel on a budget, but not be dirt cheap either. I consider myself to be more of a mid-range traveler. I'm not staying in the luxury hotels, but I'm also not staying in hostels, although that's still an option if I'm gonna do like a night or two somewhere. What I do is I book Airbnbs or Vrbos or short-term rentals, but I book them for longer periods of time. I found that if you hit at least the 28-day mark, a lot of different Airbnb hosts will give you a discount for a monthly rate versus a nightly or a weekly rate. And it significantly drops the price, gives you a lot more options in a much more affordable price range. I personally have been trying to keep my average monthly rate to no more than what I was paying my rent when I had an apartment in around the Washington, D.C. area. So as long as I'm sticking to that as my budget, I'm perfectly fine. And I get it, that's probably a little bit higher of budget than some people, but I'm able to stick within that budget. And I've even found branching further around the world that it's even easier to keep the monthly rate lower. So if you've made it this far in this video, here's a few tips to keep in mind when you're trying to book your travel, especially if you're more of like a mid-level traveler like me. Book early. This personally cost me several $100s in Puerto Rico. I know by hesitating a few days close to the date that I was actually going to fly to book the ticket for the flight, it went up $100. And the place I wanted to stay at was no longer available, so I ended up having to go with another option that was a couple $100s more than the original place I was going to book. Try to pick less touristy destinations. When you choose to go to somewhere like Rome, the food's gonna be more expensive. It's really aimed at tourism, so just in general, it's probably gonna be more pricey. Sorry, Rome, I did love you, but you get the point. Zoom out on a map and find cool places to go in areas you wouldn't have even thought to go to. That's honestly how I ended up in Peru, because I wanted to keep in the East Coast time zone, or at least kind of close to that time zone, so I ended up looking further south and I found Lima and Cusco. And both of those, accommodation-wise, have been significantly cheaper than a lot of the places I've stayed in, especially in the US. I'm talking like half. Use Google Flights Explore mode to help you figure out where to travel. See where has cheap flights, and then see what the accommodations look like once you find those destinations. Or find ways to have cheaper or free housing. I know there's a lot of programs where you can swap houses, or I've seen trusted house sitters where you can pet sit for people. Even if you don't do that full time, that does give you some potential like shorter terms where you're not paying for a place to stay. Don't trust everything you see on social media about traveling. You can travel somewhere in the mid-range, not a luxury traveler and not a super budget traveler. It does work if you want to be in the mid-range somewhere. So you have options. Get to it. Travel.